Next up, balancing your diet. It is essential to balance your diet when you're engaging in high-level sports. What I mean by balance is balancing fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, the macronutrients in your diet. So when we talk about balance, we're talking about something called the acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges, the AMDRs. And the acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges are as follows. For carbohydrates, you should be consuming between 45 and 65% of your calories. Fats should be between 20 and 35% of your total calories. And protein should make up between 10 and 35% of your total caloric intake. Now, athletes will be on the high end of protein for the most part, typically on the lower end for fats, low to mid. But you definitely do not want to drop your fats too low. That will decrease performance dramatically. And typically in the high end for carbohydrate intakes. Now, if you have heard of the keto diet, sometimes you hear about people moving on to the keto diet. I would tell you straight up that the keto diet is not for athletes. It will decrease your performance, and it is also an unhealthy choice because it lacks balance. Keto diets have high fat and low carbohydrate. Here's some papers which describe the effects of a ketogenic diet. That's a high fat, low carbohydrate diet. Finney brought out the first paper which said that there was no difference in exercise capacity, but since then there have been many other studies. Helga, Fleming, Zajac, they all show decreases in performance for athletes choosing a ketogenic diet, either with a ketogenic diet alone or even a ketogenic diet and carbohydrate loading before an event. Keto diets are unhealthy and do not work for athletes. Here's the results of one of those studies, Burke et al., looking at the performance of elite 10-kilometer race walkers. You can see before training on a high-carb diet and after training on a high-carb diet, you can see that performance in a time trial was dramatically improved. This is what we see typically with athletes on a high-carbohydrate diet or diet with that 45 to 65% of the calories coming from carbohydrates. And here in the last column, you can see a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, and you can see that performance for the 10K runners got worse on a low carbohydrate, high fat diet. So why do we know that we should be choosing carbohydrates in the 45 to 65% range? We know that this is the healthiest range, and you want your athletes to be healthy so they can perform at their best, and you also want them to be fueling with the best fuel source possible, and carbohydrates are that fuel source. You can see this meta-analysis looking at risk of death versus energy intake from carbohydrates. You can see that the lowest risk of death, i.e. the healthiest you can be, is with carbohydrate intake of somewhere close to 50, perhaps 55% of your total calories. Just a note, those carbohydrate calories should be split between refined grains and whole grains. In fact, the more whole grains you can get into your diet, the healthier your diet. Just a quick note about balance. It is essential to have fats in your diet, so do not eliminate fats from your diet. Sometimes I hear athletes concerned about fats and trying to reduce or eliminate fats entirely from their diet. That is a mistake. Some fats are essential, particularly omega-3 fats like ALA, alpha linoleic acid, and fats like EPA and DHA. These are fats that are often found in things like fish. Many athletes, in fact, most people in the United States are short of fats. If you do not consume at least 2 to 3 servings of fish a week, you run the risk of being short or deficient in the omega-3 fatty acids. I would urge people that are in the undesirable non-fish eating category to consider taking a fish oil supplement. If you're getting irregular fish consumption, maybe fish oil supplement on days that you're not eating fish would be a reasonable idea. If you're eating fish regularly, typically 3 times a week, then you should be getting sufficient omega-3 oils to support your athletic lifestyle. Regarding protein recommendations for athletes, protein recommendations, we'll go into this in more detail in a later episode, but you should know that it is recommended that athletes take between 1.6 and 1.8 grams per kilogram per day of protein. A source of protein like whey protein is excellent. You don't have to spend a lot of money. The cheapest forms of whey protein are perfectly effective. Endurance athletes need slightly less, 1.2 to 1.8 grams per kilogram per day. And occasionally, athletes that are training really hard, particularly strength athletes in the weights room, may require up to 2 grams or perhaps 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. But not more than that. Beyond that, you're just wasting your money.